Chevy Chase made millions laugh on Saturday Night Live. But one co-star never laughed with him. She watched him say things that made the whole cast freeze. She heard the racist jokes. She saw the fights backstage. For decades, she kept quiet about what really happened. Now, at 74, she's finally talking. The man who played bumbling dads and lovable goofs wasn't the real Chevy. The real one made grown men back against elevator walls, made writers cry, and made one woman promise she'd never forgive him. Cornelius Crane Chevy Chase was born on October 8, 1943, in Lower Manhattan. From the start, his life was soaked in old money and elite privilege. His mother, Kathleen Parker Browning, had been adopted by Cornelius Vanderbilt Crane, an heir to the Crane Company fortune. That one decision linked young Chevy to the Vanderbilts, one of the richest families in American history. The Crane Company was a major industrial force. It made plumbing fixtures and valves, and at its peak, it was worth millions. Kathleen's own mother had named her son Cornelius, hoping Crane would leave them his empire. But it all backfired. Crane cut them off completely and donated everything to Buddhist charities instead. Chevy's mother never got a cent, and she never got over it. She took her anger out on Chevy, not with discipline, but with rage. Behind closed doors, the mansion wasn't calm and refined. It was bitter. Chevy wasn't just wealthy. He came from a bloodline stretching back to 1624, when his ancestors first landed in Manhattan. His family tree included mayors of New York City, generals from the American Revolution, and even passengers on the Mayflower. His bloodline traced back to John Howland and William Brewster, founders of Plymouth Colony. He was also descended from Anne Hutchinson, the Puritan rebel who challenged colonial religious leaders. Chase's family wasn't just rich, they were woven into the very beginnings of America. He was listed in the social register as a child. That meant he didn't just have money, he belonged to the highest social class in the country. His maternal grandfather, Rear Admiral Miles Rutherford Browning, was a war legend. Born in 1897, he graduated early from the Naval Academy when America entered World War I. He later became a test pilot and a key figure in developing aircraft carrier strategy. But it was in World War II where he made his name. As Chief of Staff aboard the USS Enterprise, he helped plan the Battle of Midway, the battle that turned the tide in the Pacific. In just 10 minutes, U.S. bombers destroyed 4 Japanese carriers. Browning's planning made it happen. He also helped plan the Doolittle raid on Tokyo. When he died in 1954, he was buried in Arlington, a war hero through and through. Even Chevy's nickname had history. Chevy came from the Ballad of Chevy Chase, an Old English tale of a brutal battle in the Cheviot Hills in 1388. His grandmother picked it to honor their Douglas clan heritage, an ancient Scottish family once so powerful they rivaled kings. That same ballad later inspired the naming of Chevy Chase, Maryland. Even his nickname was soaked in medieval bloodlines. But all that legacy didn't shield him from family chaos. When he was 4, his parents divorced. His father, Ned Chase, was a Princeton-educated editor who later married into the Folger coffee empire. That brought even more money. Meanwhile, Chevy's mother remarried twice, first to John Cedarquist, then to Lawrence Widdows, a composer and professor. But wealth didn't mean peace. Chevy has spoken about the abuse he suffered from both his mother and Cedarquist. By 2005, both his parents had died, closing a long and painful chapter. Despite the wealth, life at home was deeply unsettling. Things didn't go better at school. Chevy was expelled from New York's elite Dalton School. Then he got kicked out of Phillips Exeter Academy, a school so prestigious that it rarely expels anyone. But Chevy's behavior forced their hand. He wasn't just a prankster. He was chaos in human form. Even schools that bent over backward for rich families wanted nothing to do with him. The most insane moment came at Haverford College. He smuggled a live cow into his dorm room. There's just one problem. Cows can go upstairs, but they can't come down. The administration had no idea how to fix the mess. Some say the cow had to be dismembered. Others claim they used a crane. Some say it was airlifted. Whatever happened, the result was the same. Chevy was expelled, and his legend as a walking disaster was sealed. Around the same time, the Vietnam War loomed, but Chase wasn't going. In 1989, he admitted, on national television, that he lied to the draft board. He told them he had homosexual tendencies. He didn't stop there. He stayed awake for 48 hours, refused to shower, and used an entire tube of hair gel to make himself look unhinged. He claimed to be a bedwetter and said he had constant headaches. The board gave him a 4F classification, medically unfit for service. Decades later, he laughed about it on TV. No guilt, no regret, just a smirk. And yet, beneath all the madness, he was brilliant. After bouncing from school to school, Chase graduated as valedictorian from Riverdale Country School in New York. He was the top student. Then came Bard College. He started as a pre-med student, then switched to English and graduated in 1967 with a Bachelor of Arts degree. All this while pulling off outrageous stunts and skirting military service. It was a strange duality, one that would define his entire career. But there's one more twist that barely anyone knows. Before the world knew Steely Dan, Chevy Chase was their drummer. At Bard College, he formed a band called the Leather Canary with Walter Becker and Donald Fagen. They played jazz and rock covers at parties. Fagen later said, "Chevy was our first drummer. We basically started Steely Dan together." Chase had perfect pitch and real musical talent. Imagine him behind the drum kit on Steely Dan's most iconic albums. But it never happened. He left the band before they made it big. In 1974, a strange little movie called The Groove Tube changed everything for Chevy Chase. It wasn't some Hollywood blockbuster. It was a bizarre, low-budget comedy that mocked TV and counterculture through odd sketches. Most of it was shot for pennies and shown in a small theater on East 60th Street in New York. The audience watched it on 3 television screens. It was weird, experimental, and totally unheard of at the time. Chase was in it with Richard Belzer and Ken Shapiro. They weren't famous yet, just part of this underground comedy project. Chase didn't even appear in the fake news segments that would later define him, but his style was already there. The way he delivered lines so seriously, like it wasn't even meant to be funny, made him stand out. Somehow, this oddball film caught the eye of a man named Lorne Michaels. He was working on a brand new late-night show and saw something in Chase that others didn't. At first, Chase was just a writer. When Saturday Night Live launched in 1975, he was behind the scenes. But something clicked. He started writing jokes about President Gerald Ford, the stumbles, the awkward falls, and whenever he read them out loud, everyone laughed. Lorne Michaels saw it too. Chase's delivery was better than anyone else's. So just like that, he was on camera. It wasn't planned. It wasn't gradual. It happened fast. And then came Weekend Update. It debuted on the very first SNL episode. Chase opened it with a line that would become iconic. "Good evening, I'm Chevy Chase, and you're not." That one line told you everything about his on-screen persona. Cocky, clever, and totally in control. He didn't just read the fake news, he acted like he didn't even care the cameras were rolling. Sometimes he'd pretend to be on the phone. Other times, he'd casually announce that he even pushed the boundaries with a segment called News for the Hearing Impaired. Garrett Morris would stand next to him and just yell Chase's headlines at the camera. It wouldn't fly today, but back then, it was considered bold satire. Chase's work on Weekend Update didn't just make people laugh, it changed television. Years later, The Daily Show and The Colbert Report would follow that same model. He was the original. But nothing shaped Chase's impact more than his take on Gerald Ford. The real Ford had been a college football MVP at the University of Michigan. He was one of the most athletic presidents in U.S. history. But Chase turned him into a punchline. Starting in November 1975, he played Ford as a clumsy oaf who couldn't walk 5 steps without falling over. And people believed it. Political analysts even said the sketches helped tip the 1976 election against Ford. Ford never got over it. In his memoir, he wrote about how Chase's weekly impressions, combined with one real-life stumble caught on tape, changed the way people saw him. In a strange twist, Ford later invited Chase to the White House and joked, "I'm Gerald Ford, and you're not." That one line proved just how deep the joke had cut. Then came the shocker. Chase quit. Just 1 year into SNL's success, in October 1976, he walked away. His final episode aired on October 30th. Publicly, he said it was for love. His girlfriend didn't want to move to New York. But behind the scenes, it was about power. Hollywood was calling. He had already been nicknamed the heir to Johnny Carson. The fame was too much to resist. The cast didn't take it well, especially John Belushi. From the start, Belushi had hated how Chase got the best jokes and the most screen time. He once complained, "I go where I'm kicked. They throw me bones dogs wouldn't chew on." The resentment only grew after Chase left. Bill Murray, who replaced him in 1977, later said the whole cast felt betrayed. "We all felt mad he had left us," Murray admitted. "It felt like he jumped ship before the rest of us could." Things got even uglier when Chase came back to host in 1978. He told Jane Curtin she couldn't be on screen with him because you can't share a frame with me. That set off Bill Murray. Just minutes before the live show, they met in Belushi's dressing room. Words flew. Murray mocked Chase's crumbling marriage. Chase mocked Murray's childhood facial scars, calling them lunar craters. Then they started throwing punches. Belushi tried to break it up, but it was chaos. Chase had to go on stage right after, blood still boiling, and deliver the opening monologue. Still, the Emmys came. In 1976, Chase won for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a variety or music program. In 1978, he won again, this time for writing. But none of it could fix what had broken. He had torched his friendships with Belushi, Murray, and the rest. His name was now tied to ego, arrogance, and selfishness. Chevy Chase wasn't just a funny guy on TV. In the 1980s, he became something bigger. He was the face of a new kind of comedy. And it all started with Caddyshack in 1980. He played Ty Webb, a rich, calm, almost spiritual golfer who looked like he didn't care about anything. But that was the point. He wasn't supposed to. Ty made being lazy and wealthy look cool. He gave random advice, like a philosopher, barely reacting to the madness around him. That role didn't just make people laugh. It shaped an entire character type for decades to come. The film only cost $6 million to make, but it exploded at the box office. It pulled in nearly $40 million and became the 17th biggest film of the year. It opened in 656 theaters and kept pulling in audiences for weeks. People didn't just see it once, they went back again and again. Some critics weren't impressed at first. Roger Ebert gave it just 2.5 stars. But time changed everything. ESPN later called it perhaps the funniest sports movie ever made. Just 3 years later, Chevy did something even bigger. In 1983, National Lampoon's Vacation hit theaters. This time, he wasn't calm or cool. He played Clark Griswold, a loving but clueless father taking his family on the worst road trip ever. The film was based on a short story by John Hughes and made on a $15 million budget. But it earned over $61 million in the US alone. It wasn't just a hit. It became a brand. European Vacation made $49.4 million, Christmas Vacation made $71.3 million, Vegas Vacation added $36.4 million, and the 2015 reboot brought in $104.9 million globally. Altogether, the franchise earned $322.5 million around the world. People loved Clark. He was a disaster, but he tried. He just wanted to give his family a good time. His mix of failure, love, and ridiculous ideas made him feel real. Chevy kept the character alive across decades, never letting go of that awkward charm. Then came Fletch in 1985. If Caddyshack was cool and Vacation was chaos, Fletch was clever. Chevy played a reporter named Irwin Fletch Fletcher. He went undercover as different characters to solve a mystery, and that's where Chevy's real talent came out. He didn't just play Fletch. He became whoever Fletch was pretending to be: a basketball player, a doctor, a mechanic. Each disguise had a different voice, attitude, and style. And somehow it all worked. He made it feel effortless. Audiences loved it. Critics praised his improvisation. Lines like, "It's all ball bearings nowadays," became inside jokes for a whole generation. Rotten Tomatoes would later call it quotably funny and fast-paced, saying it was one of his best performances ever. That same year, he had 3 major films: Fletch, European Vacation, and Spies Like Us. Combined, they made hundreds of millions worldwide. Studios started betting on his name alone to sell tickets. His face meant money. But behind the success was pain. Literally. During his early days on Saturday Night Live, Chevy's physical comedy hurt his back badly. The pain never really went away. In 1986, he checked into the Betty Ford Clinic for a painkiller addiction. He later joked that his nose hurt too much, hinting that pills weren't the only problem. His publicist tried to soften the story, calling it a prescription issue related to back pain. But everyone knew it was bigger than that. In 2016, he entered rehab again. This time, it was alcohol. He was 72 years old and checked into the Hazelden Center in Minnesota. His team called it a tune-up. But for most people, that just showed how long his addiction battle had lasted. Then came the biggest crash of all. In 1993, Fox gave Chevy his own talk show. They spent over $4 million just to launch it. The network believed it would pull in 5 to 6 million viewers a night, more than The Late Show with David Letterman. They were wrong. The show barely reached 3 million viewers. By the end, it dropped below 2 million. The set was built in the Aquarius Theater, renamed the Chevy Chase Theater, just for him. But 29 episodes later, the show was canceled. Within 2 days, workers were already painting over his name. It was awkward. Critics tore it apart. Chevy looked nervous and uncomfortable. He couldn't handle interviews. He fumbled through jokes. The audience was made up of retirees and people from halfway houses because no one else wanted to come. Even the set had problems, like fish tanks with dead fish and fake basketball shots edited to look successful. TV Guide later ranked it the 16th worst TV show of all time. Things didn't get better at the movies either. In the early 90s, Chevy's films started bombing. In 1991, Nothing But Trouble cost $40 million. It only made $8.5 million back. The next year, Memoirs of an Invisible Man made $14.4 million on another $40 million budget. Then came Cops and Robertsons in 1994, just $11.4 million in total earnings. That's around $34 million combined against more than $100 million spent. Studios stopped trusting him with big roles. Chevy's name stopped meaning box office gold. It meant risk. By then, he wasn't just fading, he was falling. The rehab visits continued. The good scripts stopped coming. And that magnetic charm that once made audiences laugh now made them wince. Chevy Chase's first marriage looked picture-perfect, at least for a moment. He married Susan Hewitt in New York City on February 23, 1973. But the fairy tale didn't last. Exactly 2 years, 10 months, and 9 days later, they divorced. The split happened on February 1, 1976, right when Chase was skyrocketing to fame on Saturday Night Live. His Weekend Update segment was turning him into a household name. But behind the scenes, fame was already poisoning his personal life. The pressure of sudden stardom, long hours, and ego clashes likely made the marriage impossible to hold together. Less than 3 years after the vows, it was all over. It was his first warning sign. Chase was struggling to keep personal relationships alive while the spotlight kept getting brighter. Then came Jacqueline Carlin, actress, model, and soon, Chase's second wife. They married on December 4, 1976, barely 10 months after his last divorce. But if the first marriage was short, the second one was explosive. In April 1978, Carlin filed for divorce. She didn't just say things weren't working out. She claimed Chase had threatened her. She even asked the court to ban him from their home. That wasn't gossip. It was a legal move that suggested real fear. For a while, they tried to work it out. But the damage was done. On November 14, 1980, the marriage ended for good. The public still saw Chase as the funny guy from TV. But Carlin's court filings painted a much darker picture behind closed doors. And then came the price tag. When the divorce was finalized, Superior Court Judge Harry Schaefer ordered Chase to pay Carlin $400,000. That was in 1980. Adjusted for today, it's more than $1.5 million. They didn't have kids. So why such a big settlement? It hinted that the judge may have taken her claims seriously. The details were sealed. But the size of the payment suggested something went very wrong. It wasn't just a breakup, it was a legal and financial disaster. For Chase, it was a costly warning. Fame doesn't protect you when the courts get involved. But in 1981, everything changed. On the set of the film Under the Rainbow, Chase met Janie Luke. She was a production coordinator. He was the star. At first, she thought he was just goofing around. But then, she saw something more. Something real. They started dating. It wasn't rushed, it wasn't reckless, and after 2 years, they married on June 19, 1982, in Pacific Palisades. Finally, it stuck. Janie gave birth to their first daughter, Sydney, on January 4, 1983. Then came Kaylee in 1985, Emily in 1988. Janie also became stepmother to Chase's son Brian from a past relationship. This wasn't just a marriage, it was a stable home, a family, a new version of Chase. And then, the most surprising twist of all. Chase started saying no to major film roles. Not because he didn't want them, because he didn't want his daughters seeing him kiss another woman on screen. He turned down American Gigolo, Animal House, Ghostbusters, even Forrest Gump. These were career-defining hits, but Chase walked away. He said, "Once I got married and had kids, I moved away from romantic roles because it seemed wrong to have my 3-year-old wondering why Daddy was kissing someone else." That one decision may have cost him millions, but he didn't seem to care. Years later, his daughter Emily put it all into words. She said her father was the funniest and most generous and loving person she knew, and that he'd been completely infatuated with her mother since 1980. It was hard to believe this was the same man once accused of terrifying his wife. Somehow, he'd turned it all around. Chevy Chase was once one of the most beloved faces on television. But behind the scenes, he became known for something else entirely. Something darker. And his long history of harassment, racism, and violence didn't fade with time. It got worse. It started quietly on the set of Community, where a young Donald Glover was quickly becoming a breakout star. Instead of celebrating his talent, Chevy lashed out. Between takes, he'd lean over and say things like, "People think you're funnier because you're black." At first, it seemed like bitter jealousy, but it didn't stop. Show creator Dan Harmon later said Chevy was the first to see how gifted Donald was, and instead of supporting him, he tried to tear him down. In 2012, it reached a boiling point. During an argument about his character's lines, Chevy exploded and said, "What's next? Am I going to say the word N? How?" Everyone on set froze. Production stopped. Chase apologized right away, claiming he didn't mean it. But the damage was done. Glover, showing restraint, told Harmon, "I don't even worry about it." But the reality was clear. Chevy's presence was toxic. And Glover wasn't the only one. Back in 1985, on Saturday Night Live, Chevy returned to host. One of the new cast members was Terry Sweeney, the first openly gay performer on the show. Chase singled him out instantly, greeting him with, "Oh, you're the gay guy, right?" Then he pitched a sketch where Sweeney would pretend to have AIDS and get weighed every week. This wasn't just bad comedy. This was the middle of the AIDS epidemic. People were dying by the thousands. Chase's joke wasn't just cruel, it was dangerous, and he didn't stop there. When Sweeney asked him politely what he should do in the sketch, Chase replied, "Start by licking my balls." The cast was disgusted. John Lovitz confirmed the whole thing. When Chase stepped into the elevator at the end of the night, everyone else backed against the walls, trying not to touch him. Fast forward to Community again, and it wasn't just words anymore. Joel McHale, the show's lead, revealed they got into actual fistfights, multiple times. One day, Chase pushed him during a scene, and McHale, a former college football tight end, shoved back. Hard. Chase's shoulder popped out of place, and it wasn't an accident. McHale said Chase told him to hit harder. In his 2016 book, McHale even included a step-by-step guide on how to fight Chevy Chase. These weren't isolated incidents. The racism, the fights, the cruelty, they followed him everywhere. And when he wasn't lashing out on set, he was feuding behind the scenes. In April 2012, on the last day of Community's season, Chase walked off the set without filming a crucial scene. Dan Harmon was livid. The next night, at the wrap party, he grabbed the mic and led the entire crew in chanting, "Fuck you, Chevy!" in front of Chase's wife and daughter. Chase didn't take it quietly. That same night, he left Harmon a voicemail so filled with rage, it sounded drunk. "You didn't give us a script to begin with, so nobody knew what the f*** was going on," he shouted. Then he let loose a string of insults. Harmon, in turn, played the voicemail live at his next comedy show. Their feud was now public, ugly, and irreversible. By late 2012, Chase's time on Community was crumbling. Another N-word incident occurred, this time during a table read. He was furious about his character becoming more bigoted, and again snapped, "What's next? Am I gonna say the word N? Hi!" The whole cast and crew heard it. Chase claimed he wasn't directing the word at anyone, but no one was convinced. It was the last straw. NBC delayed the season premiere, and Chase quietly left the show for good. But his anger didn't stay behind the cameras. In 2018, he was driving near the Tappan Zee Bridge when another car supposedly cut him off. The 74-year-old actor followed the truck across the bridge, flashing his headlights and tailgating. At the next exit, both cars pulled over. Chase stormed up to the young driver, yelling, "Do you know who the F I am? I will ruin your lives." Then he tried to punch him. The 22-year-old, Michael Landrio, kicked him back, so hard that Chase collapsed. Police were called. Landrio was charged, but said it was self-defense. Later, he told reporters, "I looked him up on Google, and I still didn't know who he was. He didn't look like he did in his movies." By 2022, Chevy had the chance to reflect, to apologize. But when asked in a CBS Sunday morning interview about being called a racist and a jerk, he just laughed. "I don't give a crap," he said. "I am who I am, and I like who I am." There was no shame, no regret, just a shrug. The stories kept piling up. In 1997, Will Ferrell watched Chase walk around the SNL offices, whispering vulgar remarks. To one female writer, he said, "Maybe you can give me a hand job later." Lorne Michaels almost banned him from the show. Ferrell later said, "I wish we'd all walked out of the room." By 2018, even younger comedians who had never worked with him had heard enough. Pete Davidson slammed him on Howard Stern's show. "He's a fing douchebag. F Chevy Chase. He's racist. He's a jerk-off." Davidson asked what everyone else was thinking. What's he done since '83? The answer? Mostly destroy his legacy. What started as one of the brightest careers in comedy ended in disgrace. Not because Chevy Chase lost his talent, but because he never learned how to treat people. And in the end, nobody cared who he was anymore. Not even Google.